Hey guys, Andy here. So last week I bought the iPhone SE 2020 and it's the first iPhone I've ever had that I've used as a daily. So I did own I think it was an iPhone 6 for development purposes, trying to learn Swift and be able to write iPhone apps. But the SE 2020 I bought to review, basically. I thought, let's give it a crack. What I've decided to do though is to segment off iOS and the software as a separate video, this video. So this video is for Android users. It's not for people that use iPhones. It is for Android users kind of wondering, well, what's the fuss about? Why is iOS so great? It's just my sort of experiences over the last 6 or 7 days using iOS when I've been using Android only for the last 6 or 7 years. Actually, I tell a lie because I have got a work iPad, so I do have some experience with iOS, but it's the first time on an iPhone. So let's go. Let me get a couple of things out of the way as well before we move into the actual software and my thoughts. If you've come here just looking for an Android versus Apple argument, please don't. Either side that you're arguing on, it really isn't worth it. I don't think it's been worth it for a few years now, and hopefully this video will kind of point out why, I suppose. Because they're just different. They're not, one's not necessarily better than the other, they're just different. So yeah, let's not do that. I mean, I might even remove comments if I can see someone particularly just trying to stir up an argument, if they're trying to troll. Also, I get it that I'm using, this is a budget iOS Apple device. It is their budget version. It's a little bit like I often see people that have been using Apple for years and years and years. They come over and they buy a Xiaomi sort of £200 device and then say, oh, the Android experience isn't very good. Well, no, it isn't very good for me on a £200 device either. So I get that it might not be the best experience I could get. We shall see. And also I bought this device myself, my own money. It's not been sent by Apple or anyone else. So please do consider heading over to patreon.com/AAUK. Even if you contribute just $2 a month, I'd really appreciate it. If I can build up a following of Patreons, it means I can buy more devices, I can make more videos. So do please consider that. Right, let's move right on with the main bulk of the video. Now, you'll have to bear with me a couple of times because I won't really know where I'm going, but basically I just wanted to show you that I am using iOS 13. I don't know where it tells us that bit basically. Maybe it's in, there we go, 13.4.1, and I am up to date. So the first thing I noticed when setting up the SE was it was a bit slow and unresponsive in the setup. There was a couple of times where I was going through the different options, yeah, do this, do that, and it just seemed to just hang and I wasn't sure what's it doing. One of the times I just waited and it went through. Another time I think it was when I was signing up for Apple TV and I waited and I got the email saying thanks for your subscription, so I thought I can just, whatever it's trying to do, I'm just going to close it down. I just closed it and moved on. But that was a bit interesting. So the SE, although it's a budget device, it is often talked about how powerful it is. Some people say it's more powerful than the top-end Android device, which is, well, we'll leave that to the actual phone review, I suppose. I would just say it is underclocked, so it does have a very powerful chip, but it is slightly underclocked. But the point being, it should have plenty of power. It shouldn't be a power issue that causes the slow sort of unresponsiveness. It must be an actual iOS issue, I assume. And then perhaps the first thing I notice is I just really miss a back button. So you go into something and you perhaps look at an app, and I'm how do I go about? And actually, you've got to find the arrow or the cross saying close this page down, and I find that a bad experience. There are certain apps where it's in a different place. Normally, it's one of the top corners, but it could be either of the corners. With a back button, at least you know where the back button is. You pretty much know what it's going to do. I know some people argue because they sometimes say some of them close apps, and you can. The programmer that's written the app can have the back button do different things, but generally it's just going to take you back to the previous screen. The previous screen might have been the home screen, which therefore that's where it goes. But yeah, I actually really miss the back button. Someone else said to me, well, yeah, that's why we've got gestures. Well, I haven't got gestures. The SE doesn't have gestures. Why not? Why would you not have gestures? It's not, okay, I've got a button, but that doesn't mean don't have gestures. So I don't quite know why they've not baked gestures into any iOS device. So over here, the keyboard just seems very basic to me. So I'm bringing in my Pixel 4, just to give you a visual. So let alone I've got a number row on the Pixel 4, which is optional. I can change that in the settings, and there is the settings button, nice and easy to get to. On iOS I've got it, and I know it's only a small thing, and probably people that use iOS every day, really, you're going to point that out as a bad point, but I just find it annoying. Like, I've got my comma and my full stop there. If I want to get to a bracket, I just hold down, there's a bracket. I've not got to go searching. I mean, again, it's not a long way away. It's not, it's just a very basic keyboard. I think, why would you not make it a bit better? And I think you can now install other keyboards. I did install the Google keyboard, but I think even then it was still quite bad. I can't remember. It's just something to sort of bear in mind, I suppose. And I kind of actually, while we're here, I kind of miss on Android. There's almost always that button there that just gets the keyboard out of the way. I mean, I just don't think there is simple as that. I mean, I guess I just cancel to get the keyboard out of the way. But so it's a little bit like that. Then probably the next biggest thing that I noticed about the notifications. So I do like, I've just cleared them all. Oh, there is one there. I do like on Android, you've got a notification bar. You can see an icon if there's a notification. On iOS, it's all about, I think they're called badges. It's all about the badges, which honestly, when I started getting used to, I did quite like. Now again, there's different launches on Android, you can turn that on. And I remember doing a Windows video where I sort of moaned about no notification. They said, well, you just look for the badges, it's easy. And I do kind of get it now. I've used this for a good few days. I've got a WhatsApp notification, I've got email, I've got 28 emails specifically. The only annoying one, for example, is in the settings, I can't actually get rid of the storage one. And we're going to come to this point in a moment, but I don't quite know how I get rid of that notification. It stays there all the time. And I would prefer in some ways of a way of just clearing it. I don't really want to have to go into Facebook, but at the same time, I don't care that I've got a Facebook notification. I've got email, I don't use the inbuilt email. So I kind of like it, but I do miss, and there are notifications there, look. That's not, it's not that there aren't any. I just miss the icons along the top that pointed out. And that's just a getting used to things thing, I suppose. And I have already started getting used to the badges. I don't entirely trust the notifications on iOS. A little bit like some of the Chinese Android devices. I'm not entirely sure I'm always getting notified when I'm supposed to. There was times, I'm fairly sure, where I was getting notification in the evening that I should have got in the morning. I feel like I might have got them in the morning and dismissed them, and they came back. Why would they come back? They're a bit big as well for my liking in some ways. So I don't need that much information on an email. Maybe it's adjustable somewhere. I quite like, yes, it says I've got 10 more notifications. Just give me the one, and I can tap it. I think there we go, and it opens them all up, and I can close back. That's quite nice. If I swipe one way, it's going to open the app. If I swipe the other way, I get more options. So let's just clear all, for example. It's a little bit weird. I'm sure I've had multiple ones of these appear, but it seems to stack more in this case. So maybe I'm just thinking of other things. It's worth noting, I do quite like, so on the lock screen, nothing. At the moment I've got it set so there's just the, I don't know what you call it, just literally a notification, no details at all. If I unlock, then I get the detail. I quite like that actually, and I'm fairly sure I can do that on Android, but yeah, that actually works quite well and gives you that sort of peace of mind, that security peace of mind. You don't want people, if you leave your phone laying around, reading all of your stuff, basically. Something where I've mentioned that. Oh yeah, I can't dismiss a notification when it comes in. So when it pops up at the top there, saying, you've got a new email, I can't go, yeah, I don't care, and just swipe it, get rid of it. I've got to dismiss it, bring it down, and then clear it. It's only a small thing, but I did find it a little bit annoying at times. Moving on, I did also quite like the control center. So if I swipe it from the bottom, here's my control center, all my sort of useful radio toggles here. I can put a sleep timer, I can lock screen mirroring, I've got a torch. I can change screen brightness, change the volume. And I quite like that I can get direct access to podcasts. Now I've not opened a podcast recently. Maybe if I open this, then come back out. No, I've got to actually start playing it. Fair enough.
Coming up on All About Android, I'm joined by...
So we start playing All About Android. And I have noticed it could be half an hour or so later. Swipe up.
Ron Richards, Florence Ion, and our guest.
I've got my
Coming up on All
controls.
About
I can skip forward and backwards. That's pretty useful, actually. There are times where I used to use Beyond Pod on Android, and I would be playing, and I'd stop it, and then even 5 minutes later, the notification is gone. I've got to open the app back up to get it playing again. And I quite like I can just go into the control panel and just start it playing. And the camera and calculator, all those things, it's just, yeah, that actually pretty handy, pretty useful. I didn't use it much, but that was just because I wasn't used to it. When I get used to it, I think it would be really quite handy. The next biggest thing, the home screen. Somebody needs to explain it to me. How is that a good idea? To randomly throw the apps on in the order they get installed, just spread across home screens. This is probably what I've most sort of not understood about iOS. It seems a really basic thing, and maybe it's because I'm a little bit of a tidy control freak type person. I'm not OCD or anything, but I just like things in their right place. So as it is, I've started setting up a few different folders, which, you know, that's good. But even then, they're just in random. I mean, I can move them around. I hold down, and you often have to select edit home screen now, but then I can move things into different places, or I can uninstall apps from here by tapping them across. But I mean, I guess the control is mine to put them wherever I want. It just doesn't seem a good idea. The amount of times I go, all right, where did I put that app? Here it, boom. I mean, even just give me the option to have them sorted alphabetically. No, is that not a logical thing? And I'm sure this is probably the one thing that people are going to be, well, you don't need to do, just I know where my apps are. I mean, okay, and there is a search thing. If we come right the way over till we've got our widgets on the left, and at the top I can just search for something. I can see Strava there, but I was going to type it in, and there's the app. And that seems, you know, that's quite a good way of doing it, but at the same time, I want to drop the keyboard out of the way, and I can't drop the keyboard out of the way. But it just seems a little bit weird. While we are here, let's have a quick look at the widgets. So just certain apps have widgets, and obviously on Android you can slap them wherever you want. On iPhone or on iOS, this is where they live, over on the left hand side, but you can edit which ones are shown, what order they're in, remove them, add them. Generally, if I didn't use it a lot, if I wanted to know what the weather was, rather than coming over here and scrolling down to find the weather, I would just find somehow from the random chaos on my home screen the weather app, and in I'd go. The App Store. Let's go to the App Store. This is another one that kind of I don't really get, again, I suppose, in that people always say how great the App Store is and how great the apps are. I haven't really noticed any difference in the quality of the apps. If you look at one to the next, you know, GFit, Strava, MyFitnessPal. In fact, some ways I prefer the Android MyFitnessPal. It just seems a little easier to use to me. Having said that, the iOS version is a lot quicker. So if I do exercise on Strava that syncs into MyFitnessPal and credits me with the calories burnt, they're there a lot quicker in the iOS version, which is interesting. So that's just what we'll do. We'll compare. So if you come into both Play Stores, that is what you see. Now, look, I can't see it. Now, granted, one is a bigger screen than the other, but not by a large amount. I mean, I don't know, I just don't like it. Even if I go over to just apps, I mean, I've only really got one app, maybe a second one there. I've got 6 apps I can see here, and I just feel they're much easier to get to. And if I was to search, let's use Strava again as the example. So there's Strava, and there's Strava. Now the first result isn't even Strava, it's an advert. Now people moan at Google about their adverts and this, that and the other, but at least the first result is Strava over here. And then I just feel like it's a much easier, quicker, other searches related. You might also like these. Similar apps here. This one I'm just scrolling through, and I think, so Map My Run is the other one at the top, so Map My Run gets duplicated anyway. I just find it a nicer experience on the Android Play Store. And that might be quite a controversial view, but honestly, that's my view. I don't know if it's worth noting at this point as well that apps generally are more expensive on iOS. So Geekbench 5 is free on Android. It costs 99p on iOS, and I go, it's 99p, so what? But I think that's generally sort of a trend you would find. Apps are going to cost a little bit more on iOS. And then we come to the storage issue. So 5 gig, 79p a month, which, sorry, 50 gig, 79p, which isn't a lot, and 50 gigs good storage, I think. But that's quite expensive, and I've got this annoying notification now. There's always, how do I get rid of that? So it's not the worst thing. I do like how it fills in information for me. So let's just say, here we go. So I'm on the Treads website. I've been looking at bikes, and I want to log in. Where do I go to log in? Here we go. Oh, I'm on the login screen. Sorry. And it lets me tap straight. Let's move that out of the way. It lets me tap straight into using my fingerprint, straight into all my passwords. Now it might be that I've duplicated some passwords on certain websites I don't really care much about. So if I've used the same password as Treads as I've used on, I don't know, Wiggle, I can scroll down to Wiggle. Well, actually I haven't, funny enough. Wiggle is that's one of the few websites that's totally random password. But if you use the same password as Wiggle, I just tap on Wiggle, put that information in, hit it, and it will say, do you want to save Treads? Oh, yes, please. And it will save it in the vault, in the password vault. If I wanted to use Google, it will know Google. I can't remember if I've ever logged in on Treads. Apparently I have, or I've just registered. And it will do it. So the very few times was I actually having to type my username and password in. And even actually on a sort of a insight and information thing, I think I was messaging somebody who was trying to send me something to review, and I said, yeah, please contact me at or please email me at, and it in the suggestion box on the keyboard popped up my email address. I thought, oh, that's actually quite clever. On Android, I do have to start typing in NDCR, and when I get to the one, it normally goes, oh, you want the email address, and I can put it in. So yeah, that's pretty good. That's quite impressive. It does seem to have quite aggressive RAM management. So, for example, Dropbox. Let's see what happens if I open Dropbox now. I did just take a photo. So there goes the upload. And to be fair, Android is a bit like that. But if I come out of it, I think it almost stops uploading things. It's very aggressive in not letting apps do things in the background. Obviously for sort of a performance and battery life reasoning. But, and I think it's got over it now. So let's go back to playing my podcast.
I'm joined by Ron Richards, Florence Ion, and
Turn it down a little bit. I find it weird I can't tap the power and then adjust with my finger, but so that's fine. But, and I've got it's a nice big control thing that's always there on the lock screen. But initially, I would turn the screen off and it would stop playing. I've got a little bit of a video clip that I can play just to sort of show what it was doing.
Conditions for a virus to jump from one species to another.
Goodall was also asked how she hoped the world might change. Because of the pandemic.
How I hope it will change and how it changes are two different.
And that's driving me mad. Why would it not let a podcast play, a media thing play in the background? That's why, I don't know. Anyway, but it seemed to learn, oh, you want this to play in the background. And now, as you just saw, it lets it work. So I don't know if that's iOS being clever or iOS being a pain. Somebody else said, or explained to me that, I don't know if they knew this as fact or just thought, if you play it from the lock screen, it would keep playing as the screen goes off. If you play it from within and then lock, it would shut up. Seems a little odd to me. There's no way of clearing all recent apps. So you bring up the app switcher, which generally is quite nice and fluid. But if you want to clear an app, you have to do them one at a time. And on Android, you normally got either at the end, clear all, or you've got some button underneath saying clear all. That's not an option here. I mean, it could be because they say these days you don't really need to clear the apps. You should just leave the phone to deal with its RAM itself. I know it's not a big thing, just something I noticed. I find it a little weird that the settings for the apps are in the settings of the phone, if that makes sense. If I go into the camera, I spent quite a while, well, where's my settings button? And then if you come out and you go into settings, and you've got to scroll down to wherever camera is. And even this, I've got to find camera. And now all of a sudden, I've got the settings for the camera. Why would they not be somewhere in the camera app? That seems a little bit weird to me. Then we're moving on to sort of just little things I noticed which might be quite specific to me. So for example, on my Android device, I can have... So I've got a sort of a work mode. It's turned off at the moment. If I tap that, it enables all of my work apps. I have separate copies of apps that are linked to my work account. So if I have my own personal Gmail, I've got an icon that says Gmail, then I add my work Gmail, it's the icon but with a little blue briefcase in the corner, and that gets turned off using that icon. Well, anyway, just turn off the work profile and it goes like grayed out, and I don't get any notification or anything. I really love it because when I've got a weekend off, I can just hit one button and I don't get bothered by work. On iOS, I can't do that, from what I can see. I mean, I can probably go into the Gmail app and say, right, this account, don't sync it for the moment. But there's no quick on-off. On the plus side, you get a bit easier fluidity between the two because they're not segregated. So on Android, it's really annoying. If I've got something that I've downloaded from like personal Google Chrome, for example, it stores it in my personal storage. If I want to then use it in a work application, it can't access it. I have to open a work Google Chrome, download it using that, and then it can be used. And it's almost like two different phones. They don't communicate, which has its strengths, like being able to turn it off, but has its weaknesses, like not easily sharing. I mean, you can share across. I'm maybe exaggerating. On iOS, you haven't got the problem. It's just everything's thrown in together. You can even get a combined inbox, which has just all of your emails, your personal, your work, just all thrown in. I can see that could be good. I don't massively like it or need it or want to, but again, so these are just things that are quite personal at this point. My watch will only connect to the Play Store on Wi-Fi. I was a bit surprised. Why just pass it through? Won't just pass through the iPhone? Interesting. Transferring files did not seem as easy as on Android. And again, this is Apple being a bit more locked down. So I was trying to take the photos off the iPhone and I would copy and paste a load of them, and after a while, after copying a few of them, it would give me some kind of error saying, I've lost connection. What do you mean you connected? It's perfectly good connection. As for trying to drag and drop something back onto the phone that you might want to watch later, I mean, as far as I can tell, not that easy. I know I've done it because I've done it with my iPad and I had to use iTunes at the time to do it. But yeah, I couldn't just drag and drop onto the phone. When I was listening to a podcast and I had my earphones, when I did next on Android, if I do next, it skips forward. That's the action it uses. The first time I did it on the podcast, it skips the whole track. It isn't what I'm trying to skip through an advert. And it goes, boom, all right, let's leave that podcast. You're done with it. Let's move to the next one. Whoa, no. So there's not much programmability. There's not much customization available in iOS that I can say, no, if you hear a next from an earphone, skip. But I do love that all my Google apps are there. So one of the first things I did was just install all of my Google apps. Sign in with my Google account. I've got my Gmail, I've got Maps, I've got Chrome, I've got podcasts I'm using now. And actually, so I generally used to use BeyondPod on Android, and I would just, because that would sync across Android devices, but it's not on iOS, I don't think. Did I check? I'm not sure. I don't think it is. So I installed Google Podcasts. So now I can literally sync across devices, hopefully including my Google Home. I'm not really looked into it. Browsers, I guess, maybe. I don't know, just it's proper. I can sync across anything. So I love that Google, because that's what Google just want you using their software mostly. That's why people get upset. Why do they price their phones so high? They're not trying to sell hardware. They really want to try and sell the software. They don't care really how you're using that software. So I can even use my Wear OS watch on iOS, which was quite nice. So this alone means a switch actually wouldn't be that painful. And this is often how I look at when I use a phone is how would I feel if I was told, right, you're using that now for the next 3 years, 4 years, forever, whatever. And honestly, actually, I'd be fine with iOS. It's not my preference. Let's make that very clear. Don't everyone get, oh my God, Andy's switching to iPhone. No. I'm just saying, as I mentioned, I think very early on, like, oh my God, probably 20 odd minutes, how has this video got this so long? Anyway, how I mentioned early on, they're just different. That's all it is. They're different. And it's about choosing which of the little things and the different ones matter to you. And honestly, all of these things, like the badges is a great example. Initially, I hated it. Not that I hated it. I thought, I need the way that Android does it. I need that way. Actually, you just get used to the different way. That's all it is. So if I was told you've got to use this phone or an iOS phone, I'd probably buy a top-end iPhone if I had to do it. I'd be all right. It's okay. If you went back 5 years and you rated each operating system, maybe 6 or 7 years, let's say 7 years, because that's when Android really was struggling and starting out, and you rated them both out of 100, Android might have been a 30 or a 35, and iOS might have been a 65, let's say. Now maybe 75, because honestly it's not changed all that much in the last few years, little dig. And that's when you used to have the big arguments, because Apple would be like, well, our operating system is rated way better than yours. But the Android people, yeah, but look at all the different things you can do. Yeah, I get that they don't always work that well, and it doesn't look that pretty, and there's not as many apps, but look at all these things you can do. So the things that 35 score covered meant a lot to them. But now, so what did I give iOS? 75? So maybe iOS is a 85 or a 90. And Android, honestly, I would put up there with it, 85, 90, if not 95, because you've still got that sort of, all those little bits and things that the geeky people like. But actually, it's a really nice fluid operating system now. So I possibly would go like a 95 or something. And there's no point arguing now which one's better, because they're both very good operating systems. It's just what you want, what works for you. That's it, really. So, I don't know, hopefully that's been interesting for you. I've actually really enjoyed learning iOS and getting used to it. And it gives me more of a feel for what the other side does. I will possibly think about, so I almost bought an iPhone 11 just to do a review of a top-end iPhone. To be honest, I didn't have the idea until about a month or two after it came out, and I'd rather do it like right at release. So maybe when the 12 comes out, don't be surprised if you see me buying one, just so I can review some top-end Apple hardware. I am reviewing the phone itself, the SE 2020. That will be done in the next couple of days. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do so you don't miss that. I have already done some comparisons of the camera of the iPhone SE, because that's pretty good. Spoiler alert, pretty good on a 400 pound device. So please do leave comments. Let me know your thoughts. Do you use both? Have you only ever used Android? Are you an Apple guy that's come over here to start a fight? Don't start a fight, but give me your thoughts on what I think, I suppose, because that'll be interesting. But do leave your comments, do subscribe, do nip over to patreon.com/AAUK. Consider dropping me some money every month. But for now, my name's Andy, and I'll catch you all again soon.